welcome everybody to another edition of Hot Program. I am your host with the most, all the way from the East Coast. And as always, folks, I am in airplane mode. And now a man who thought the movie Terminator Salvation was about Jesus coming back to kill non-believers like in the book of Revelation. A man who needs no introduction. Boom.
Connection is down. Okay, there I am. I'm going to switch over to my phone because my internet connection is. I don't have certain earbud or something like that. I apologize.
All right. No worries. All right. So we'll give my one black friend a minute to get his connection going here. I think he's just got headphones on. No worries. All right. We're going to be watching a video from Mindshift today. So while he gets that together, we can actually just check out the introduction video to this guy on his channel. So we'll have an idea who this content creator is.
Turned out to be wrong. What if your beliefs and assumptions, what if everything you thought you knew turned out to be wrong? What if your beliefs and assumptions were challenged? What if you had to rethink everything from scratch? My name's Brandon, and this is Mindshift, and that's exactly what happened to me after 30 years of being a fundamentalist Christian. Since then, it has been a voyage of discovery for me. My only goal has been to follow truth wherever it may lead, and it is leading to new perspectives, new worldviews, and new philosophies. On Mindshift, I want to explore all the ideas that are associated with free thinking and skepticism. We'll cover a wide array of topics from atheism to agnosticism to different religions and deconversions and deconstructions of those religions, as well as a look at many other different kinds of ideas, concepts, and philosophies. We'll explore the big questions of life and examine the assumptions that underline our beliefs. My goal on this channel is to help show you the power and freedom of a mind shift. I want to help challenge your beliefs and your thoughts and the reasoning behind those beliefs and thoughts. I want to examine with you why we all believe what we do, how we reach those conclusions, and why we aren't more open to taking a look at the other side. I don't know everything and I am not an expert, but these topics are near and dear to my heart, and again, after my own deconversion from Christianity, I'm just excited to share with others what was able to happen in my own life. I'll be sharing personal stories like my deconversion, covering individual topics like free will or prayer or faith, etc., and hopefully getting to interview people from all different walks of life, hearing their stories, their beliefs, their worldview shifts, how it's impacted their lives, and ultimately examine truth as best we can. Thank you so much for being here. Please subscribe, turn on notifications, engage with me in the comments, and be open to looking at things.
All right, gang. So I think he's I'm gonna guess here an atheist content creator. We're still having a little bit of trouble with my one black friend's signal. I see him; he's back in his seat, but I'm having an issue. My one black friend, if you can hear me, just refresh your browser. But yeah, he seems interesting. We've never covered anything from his channel before, so this will be a first for us. Although I'm very excited about the video. The video is just about shifts in evangelicalism based on like recent research. So we're going to be looking at some of the trends. So the question of the day for you guys is, what do you think is responsible for the trends? And I'm gonna just go ahead and get it started with I'm gonna throw the big C word into the ring. Depending on, I don't know how recent these trends are, gang. So I'm just blind calling, but I'm gonna just put my cards out on the table. If we're talking since 2020, I'm gonna say that fucking fucked up ass pandemic may play a role in shifts in evangelicalism. Hey, my one black friend,
hey,
how's it going? All right, so we just
Yes, go ahead.
I was just gonna say we just played a video, the intro video for Mindshift. He's a I think an atheist content creator. I dropped his channel in the chat. So he just shared that he's someone who deconverted, and he thinks people will be interested in his channel because they may be, having similar issues, and he sounds like a counter apologist, basically. So
Okay.
sounds like he's got a very typical story for.
I did a little bit of that myself this week, so it's all right.
But yeah, so I was just putting that on, and the video we're gonna do is called "Reacting to New Research on American Evangelicalism." So I'll go ahead and put that up here. All right, let's go over there first. That actually kind of helps. Yeah.
Welcome to Mindshift. I'm Brandon. Today is another Saturday short. I hope these are usually around 10 to 12 minutes. Sometimes they're hair longer. Oh well, whatever. I'm going to be reacting today to a clip that was sent in by one of you. Thank you for always doing that. My email's in the description of every single video, so please feel free to send me whatever you want. And this clip specifically comes from CBN News, which is like a CNN for Christians. It's a 24-hour news cycle online, and in this clip, we are going to be looking at them covering the decline of Christianity in America, specifically of an evangelical sense. I think that there can be some overreactions to the.
Do you mean like shit they hear Christians say all the time, or counter or apologetics, Crystal?
Idea of Christianity being in decline, and I think that there can be some underreactions. I think that there is good that can come from it and harm that can come from it. And I'd like to just openly discuss some of those differences. What I do believe, which is that this religion is unnecessarily harmful since it is not real, and that we can do better. If we will do better is a completely other thing. And I don't know, but for now, let's get into it.
Recent findings from the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University found a growing decline in Christian beliefs and church attendance. George, thank you for joining us. So the American church isn't bouncing back the way we'd hoped for after the pandemic. Evangelicals are in trouble. So tell us what's happening and why.
Well, the big picture is when we look at some of the measures that often are looked at, like church attendance, we find that that has dropped since the beginning of the pandemic from 56% of adults attending at least once a month down to 35% now.
And this was them only attending once a month. So this isn't even regular church attendance. This was 56%, about half the nation went at least once a month, and now 35%. This is a huge difference. And I think that the pandemic has a lot to do with it. It allowed people the time and space away from their other influences, from their echo chambers, from their sense of owing someone like their parents or their friends or their spouse, etc., whatever, going to church. And church can also work in the way that church is meant to work, to kind of reignite your faith on a weekly basis. There's other good reasons to do it, like to worship the Lord or to have community. Like, I'm totally fine with that. But I think there is an aspect to church, which is like filling up your car that is faith with the gas to get through another week. And I think a lot of people, when they didn't put enough gas in that car for a while, it just stopped working.
So gang, I promise you, I did not see this video ahead of time. I just, you know how it is. I see something I think it's good to respond to, so we react to it with you guys. But yeah, that was my guess. My guess, like before we started, was that a lot of it would be related to the pandemic. I also think part of this issue is the response. It's the response. I think people of genuine goodwill, who are good faith people, when lives are on the line, when people are dying, that is rubber meets the road time. That is okay. What are we gonna do? There's clearly a situation here, and what people do matters. And when you see the church's response just be so selfish, just be, flying in the and look, I want to be clear too. Hashtag not all churches. Like I do
hashtag not all Christians.
I do realize there was a lot of churches that led the way and did what they could do and but people are going to always respond to cultures, the community. The Christians, you're a team. You're you guys are. We're gonna react to the whole package, and so many churches were the epicenter of outbreaks. Were insisting. Were the first people to go back to doing things in person. Didn't social distance. and even people got sick. People in those churches got very sick. Oftentimes, church leadership got very sick.
The leaders, mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I just think that people saw that, and that was a big turn off. Because they realized that there's something not going on in the churches that I think even felt Christ-like, right? Because I'm not saying these people deconverted, right? So for me, it may be okay. Well, that's a time to question bigger things, or as a non-believer, right? We watch that all play out very differently. But we're talking about this trend of less. Presumably people who are less people going to church pandemic. I don't want to assume that those people lost their faith, right? We just want to assume all we know about them is they stopped going to church. And I think for a lot of them, that means they didn't stop identifying as Christians necessarily. But if that's the case, I think they saw the church doing something they didn't identify as Christ-like. This didn't feel like what. This didn't feel. It feels like the WWJD. They were going the wrong way on it. And I think people recognize that, and to their credit.
Yeah. I think also what happened is people saw no change when they didn't go. If prayer was answered at a rate of roughly 50%, it continued to be. Some of those people that they went to church with that they didn't like, they didn't have to see, and that probably was pretty nice. The drive may have been long, and now they don't have to do it. And as you've heard me say this morning, I said it off air, but I think maybe there are people logging on to go see church, and that's why my internet's slow on Sunday mornings. I don't know. I'm having to use my phone. But it could be a number of factors. In 2020, I was seeing someone who would attend church online. She would watch it online, and she invited me, though she knew I was an atheist, to watch it online. And they were fascinated. Wow, we have an atheist joining us for church. I'm like, sure. I was invited, so here I am. And my goal there wasn't to beat up on their faith or anything. Sure. Just participate with them. So I think those are additional factors that may be part of it. Plus, if someone was tithing and they were in a position where they, for some reason, needed the money more, again, there's no shift in their life that says that church is working, that God is working. So they may have, I wonder how many people became non-believers during that period of time. Certainly we can agree a lot of people became more apathetic because they had people that they loved that were dying.
I was just about to ask about that.
Yeah, regardless of how much they prayed. I have a neighbor who passed away, really great guy, super helpful, mentor type, and he's very helpful to me and a great guide to me. And he didn't last 3 weeks. It shredded his lungs in 2 weeks. And he was, he was being helpful to his family, and that's how he got it. His parents. And so it's one of those oddball things that no matter how penitent you are, it's not going to fix the problem. And I think we live in a unique time, Pocket Locker and audience, where the thoughts and prayers thing actually got made fun of for a while. And I was astonished. And I said to myself, no doubt, 60% of the people are probably believers that are poking fun at the thoughts and prayers thing. It's just they have a chance to be anonymous to do it. Mm-hmm. And they've been, I don't know. I think we're living in an interesting time where we're going to continue to see those numbers of church attendance diminish. And because of the way that American politics is, there are people that use religion, because it's useful, as a way to, I'm not a video game person, because there's probably a name for it, but it's a way to increase their health or something like that, to make them stronger for the political race or to get more support or something like that. But when you look at their life, they're not Jimmy Carter. If you ask me if he's a Christian, I'll go, yeah, let me point some things out to you that this guy has been doing that leads me to believe he's a Christian. But I can't do that for Joel Osteen, right? I can't. He's got more resources, way more resources than Jimmy Carter. I can't even say that Osteen, who has probably 1 million people plus a week paying attention to him, they're not the same. They're not on the same level. They're just not. So I think you're going to find, along with the younger folks, realizing like, I don't think I need that. I don't think it's true. Pragmatic Crystal says your God is unnecessary, as we can plainly see.
I think,
Agreed.
yeah, I think there's somebody on your, I think they're responding to somebody on your channel that I can't see because they're blocked on my channel. There's, you know, that's a, there's like a, maybe Christ brings a sword or somebody. I don't know. Is that who?
Oh, his mouth is supposed to be a sword. So what's he going to stand up there and be a stand-up comedian, shouting clearly obvious things at people? I don't know. And Crystal, I don't know how to make somebody a mod on my channel or whatever. If you think somebody needs to go, if somebody wants to briefly explain to me what to do, I can go on there and block them. This isn't supposed to be something that's difficult or a tough time for anybody.
Oh yeah, I'm not even sure. I don't even know what channel. I don't know if they're on yours or
I wonder if
our
it's the
program.
pandemic. I also wonder if it's just other things that are going on. I mean, the internet has been around longer, and this decline has been happening in large part since really the availability to be online, and things are shared more rapidly than ever, and there's more people doing things like of what I'm doing, etc. I didn't see my first atheist YouTube video until I was like 27 or 28, and it definitely was a catalyst for hearing the other side. And even though I was just like many of you, I was the Christian who thought, this is ridiculous. What is this guy talking about? How weak is his faith? How dumb is he? How much does he not understand his Bible? How much does he not have a relationship with this God like I do, etc.? Here I am. It can happen to you. I'm telling you. And I'm not saying that all deconversion happens from people being exposed to atheist YouTubers, but it does happen because I think of exposure of some kind to some alternate idea, or just seeing other people's worldview and lifestyles that aren't even preaching or promoting it, just simply the existence that other people who are still people happen to not think exactly like you do. And again, I think that this just breaks down when you don't have that weekly church going. So I think that stat is really, really interesting.
We look at Bible reading, we've seen as a decline from 37% reading the Bible outside of any kind of church events down now to about 33%. If we just look at those who embrace the name of Christianity, that also has continued its skid. We're down at 68%.
I think
that's something that we need to pay attention to.
Two stats here that I want to focus on. One is 33% of people read their Bible. And by the way, like, imagine the person who says yes to that. They just did I'm going to open up and see what there is today, or maybe they're.
So pause it. We actually just were watching the video of an evangelist who was saying that's kind of how she made her whole career shift. Was she just opened the Bible and the pastor spoke to her. It was, you know, it's a thing that Christians take for granted as the MO, but it's just unbelievable when you actually hear somebody say it out loud. You're like, oh, yep, that is the thing. The other person. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I did. I got Psalm 37:17. The Lord, wait, why is there a you there? I don't know. The Lord, you, the righteous, upright, honest, doing what is right and good. Urim and Thummim, objects. Oh, this is. I got the back section with the dictionary.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Well, amen.
What truer place could there be?
That's defining the faith. Yes.
The other Bible reader I want to touch on is there's two Bible readers I want to touch on. All right, the one we'll toss away first is the person who really they said outside of a church service, right? All right, so outside of, so never mind, because that would have been the church service person. But outside the church service, it's the devotional reader, right? It's the person who reads their Bible as part of like some daily or weekly devotional ritual they have, which is just like not helpful because it's very similar to reading the Bible in church, where you're going to read, you know, pre-selected sections that are meant to sort of treat your Bible as an inspirational life coach or something, rather than, you know, any sort of meaningful theology. Nevertheless, actually dealing with the Bible critically or any of the issues. Yeah. All right. I'll roll it.
They're following Psalms, and they read one pretty Psalm or one pretty proverb a day. And so that's why it's additionally hilarious to me when we look at things like Braxton's questions, and he's talking about how many theological books has the atheist read, etc. It's like your own Christians don't even read their Bible. We have a nation of Christians. That's the second stat. It's still at 68%, which is pretty high. Yes, it's down. It's under the 70% mark. That's very interesting. And the decline is happening at an exponential rate compared to previously. But 68% of people say they're Christians, and within that group, a third of them read their Bibles. That to me blows me away, because as a Christian who took it seriously and read their Bible, I was under this idea. There is a God. He's the real God. He's the only God. He wrote one book, a collection of books. He wrote one thing for us, though, gave us one piece of media that was truly from him. This is what we have. Yes, we have all the theological books. Yes, we have all the pastors. Yes, we have all the interpretations. Yes, we have the catechisms. Yes, we have the church tradition, etc. But we have this canon. This should suffice,
God
which is
wrote a
already
book
another problem.
for you.
And if I say I believe in the creator of the universe, and I say that I love him, why on earth would I not be reading this book? How many of you love a spouse, and if they wrote a book, you wouldn't even bother to read it? I can't imagine any of you.
Again, pause the tape. That was a fantastic example. Gang,
It's
if
a
your
great example.
spouse wrote a book and you did not read it, there would be some issues there. Now, you could say something like, I got to be honest with you. If I wrote a book and I had a spouse, imagine both of those are big ifs, gang. If I had a spouse and if I wrote a book, there's a really good chance they wouldn't read it, because it would be a scientific, biology book that they're just like, there's technical reasons people don't read books. All right, but
your spouse could still check for comma splicing.
But we just mean like overall. People know what we're talking about.
Yeah.
Overall, about life, assuming it's not a freaking technical manuscript, assuming your person just wrote a book about life or whatever, or a children's story or something like that, and you just didn't read it, that'd be kind of weird. But no, it really is true that it's like God wrote a book for you, Christians, and you just seem to never get around to it. But there is a mentality that I sort of always understood, where Christians think that it's like the recruitment pamphlet, and it's like, now the thing I think is relationship and identity. People think on the strong and serious side, it's all about that relationship with God, and it's a fee thing. It's a relationship about feelings and emotion, and that is why, like he said, they need to go to church to get that weekly fill up, that emotional, high, so to speak. And I think that living from emotional spiritual high to emotional spiritual high is kind of the deal.
Well, before I stopped going to church, I was already an atheist, but there were people who I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed their company and seeing them. And, there was one family that had a baby, and I wanted to see, like, how's the little guy doing and stuff like that. That's mainly what it came down to. I would sit there, I would drive there, which took me 40 minutes. I then find a place to park, and then I would sit in the church for an hour and a half or something like that. I'd sing along. I mean, you probably wouldn't know that I didn't believe. And then I would greet people before and after, but when it was time for me to go get a burger or go home or go to the beach or go see one of my other friends that lived nearby, I was done. I wasn't thinking on, spiritual matters for the rest of the day. That wasn't the point. I thought all that is just, all that church stuff is just to make people feel good. That's what it did for me.
Yeah, I mean, there was... good.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it was kind of the same deal. Like, even as a non-believer, when I was playing in the church, I accepted the benefits of participating in the church community without having to believe. I was just like, yeah, it's you know, I like seeing these people. I like, you know, going to lunch with them after, and you know, playing volleyball or game night Sunday evenings, and you know, I enjoy. It's like being part of a group. It was just, there was a lot of benefits of like being part of a club or being part of a group, and they're there really irrespective of if you believe or not. I actually think that's probably why there's more non-believers in church than people are aware of. It's just church is not really the safe environment to get into it.
Well, I think, look, if you have a person with a family, let's say there's a woman, she goes with her husband and her 2 children, and she no longer believes, but her husband and her 2 children do. She wants to be supportive of them and let them find their own way. And so she sits there week after week after week after week. And when the air conditioner isn't working and they're not going to have church because of that, she's happy not to go. You know, well, let's go to the water park, or let's go, you know, she'll find another activity that's just as good. Or, okay, everybody, spring cleaning. Here's your bucket and your wash rags, and let's get to it. So there are plenty of things available to replace church, including more sleep. It's as appealing as heaven might be, and as little work that is required to get there, a lot of people are figuring out that it's an empty promise.
Absolutely. The thing I was thinking about is, yeah, that's so that's the sort of touched on, you know, in our case, the lack of the relationship. But I do think that's where a lot of people are with the like relationship side of it, and also part of the same crowd, I think, is the identity. I think, to be honest, I kind of put them on a spectrum, and I do think the people who are like into the relationship aspect of it, because we're talking about Christians who are unlikely to read the Bible, right? And so they're a lot of them, which is most of them, right? They're like serious about the faith, right? But they're serious about their relationship with Jesus, and it manifests itself in other ways. And then I think there's other people on that spectrum who are over here, and they just identify as Christians. And so I think there's probably overlap between them, right? But I think of them as being maybe a little bit less serious. They're just the people who are still going to check Christian on the census or whatever.
Well, these aren't the ones that are going to talk to you on the plane. These aren't the ones that are going to evangelize you on the plane.
No, right.
No. I think by and large, a lot of people being surveyed, and maybe we should call the Pew Research people and have them on. Like, hey, wait, what are these questions? Because it may be, and I think this is the case because I've had to create surveys before. I think these questions are poorly formed as not to define a person as a Christian, but to allow them to define themselves as a Christian. For instance, I know people who believe in a God, and for them, that makes them Christian, and they go to a Christian church. They're told about Jesus there, but like, oh, Jesus is just some guy. I guess God sent him. But they don't believe that Jesus is their savior or something like that, because that's sort of unnecessary. So if you have that, is that person a Christian? Jesus would go, no, that person's not a Christian. It's fine that they believe in a God. And when you ask them about it, it's not even the God of the Bible. It's just a God. So it's just one of those weird things where if we don't define, or if Pew doesn't strictly define what a Christian is, then they're subject to get these people who are not Christians, but merely deists. Now, that's an interesting number too, but if that's not the question Pew is asking, it certainly isn't the answer they're getting. They're getting a generalized, lumped-in believer in a deity, and not necessarily what they themselves would call Christians. And I wonder if those numbers are allowed to be inflated so it doesn't become frightening for them, because I think we're about to witness this on Twitter, right? Elon Musk has not been careful with Twitter. Facebook has come along and said, we're going to create this Threads thing that's like Twitter. Okay, So just like we saw a mass exodus from MySpace to Facebook, we're about to see a mass exodus from Twitter to Threads and whatever else alternatives somebody dreams of. People are going to leave. They're just going to leave because what they want is somewhere else. What they want, and maybe in an uncluttered sense, it may be in both places, but there's less hassle somewhere else. Yeah. And I think that's what's going on with the church. People don't want a hassle. But if you just read, let me hold it up because it's floppy. If you just read this book, you're gonna see there's a lot of hassle in there. A lot.
It's interesting because I think that modern evangelicalism actually requires you to be biblically illiterate. You have to have a certain, I don't know, tooth and nail is the word for some reason that's coming to mind. You have to have a certain hardcoreness in you, like I don't know how much. Yeah, my grandparents read the Bible for sure, but they're Pentecostals, right? And they're hardcore Pentecostals. So whatever they've got in them can take the ugliness, quite frankly, right? Like they've just their whole lives they've been, oh yeah, the homosexuality is all sorts of fucked up, and and the earth, God created the earth in 6 days, and like they're biblical literates. Most of like Gen Z American kids, perpetually online or whatever, they don't have that in them. Is somebody knocking on my door?
I don't know.
On a Sunday? That'd be weird. All right, let me go roll this tape real quick.
Okay.
You want to read it, even if you didn't like the information, even if you didn't think it was pertinent to your life. I bet just because you love this person and they wrote this thing and it's a way for you to know them better, you would read it. How many Christians have then not even read the entirety of the Bible? That's why there's still 68%. If every single person who professed belief in Jesus Christ right now in this month read the Bible from A to Z, I bet we drop another 5 percentage points. So very interesting just to kind of look at the state of Christianity in America, or the status quo, if you will. Let's continue on here.
And what I found most
I don't think you can get 5% to
that only 55% of evangelicals believe that people are born sinners and can only find salvation in Jesus Christ. Did that shock you? This is a core evangelical Christian belief. Why do you think the church is faltering on that?
Well, there are some things that we know that even evangelical churches tend not to talk about very much. Sin is one of those issues. The reality of Satan is another one of those issues. And then also look at the fact that a third of the people who sit in evangelical churches every week would not probably qualify as born-again Christians.
Okay, 2 more fun stats.
50. Okay, but yeah, I'm kind of with them on this again, gang. This is because this is that tooth and nail I was talking about. This is the average Christian. I'm gonna just put it to you like this, gang. They're soft. The average Christian today is soft, and they are not really willing to ride or die on the hardcore truths of Christianity. They're not, that guy talking about demons and Satan and all that. The guys who are going to call in to Amy Newman's YouTube show and tell Bree that she's a Satanist trying to spread the religion of booty sex on behalf of come on, gang. Like, people just don't have that in them anymore. They want to go to church on Sunday morning. They want the band to be awesome. They want to have a little mini concert. Then they want everybody tell them Jesus loves them and they're gonna be blessed, feel real good, and then go home. Like, they're not ready to hold the world to the standard of the hardcore Christians, which is, is why, and that's why. That guy sounds nuts to most people. He sounds absolutely nuts.
Well, when I hear the reality of the expression, like the reality of Satan, or that Satan is real, or that hell is real, well, I've read biblical texts that tell me the general location of where hell is. So I should be able to go take a helicopter and a Jeep or something like that to go to Do.L and look around. I should be able to point from space. I could have the ISS point one of their thermal cameras at the desert of Do.L to see if we see some fiery pits. They should be there, right? It's been written. They should be there. There's all sorts of details that if they were asking me, they'd have to account for. I've mentioned this guy before. There's a friend from elementary school. This guy's known me basically my whole life. And he posts a lot of Bible memes on his Facebook page, and I just respond. And often I'm not saying, oh, that's a bunch of crap. I'm showing him a completely different verse that says the opposite of what he's saying. And the other week he says, well, see, you just proved the meme's point. I said, but I used the Bible to do it, about how people change what the Bible says. So the scripture you put up says that if God wants people to have what they're praying for, he'll give it to them, which we know is not true, right? Right? We know it's not true. And I put up the scripture where Jesus says, just ask in my name and God will do it. The Father will do it. And he's like, yeah, but see, he doesn't say if it's his will. I'm like, exactly. Someone added that later when they realized it wasn't true. When people probably were leaving because it was BS. Pine Creek put up a thing with, as many of you know, the Bible will give you in the Gospels the same story 2, maybe 3 different ways. And the clip that he put up on the screen, the quote he put up on the screen, talks about the end times. Well, if you Google the expression, or you use one of these Throckmorton's gospel parallels, and you look at the verses side by side, Mark makes a very plain meaning of it. And you can see how Matthew changes it because he's fixing it, right? He's fixing it because he says, well, this obviously isn't happening. We didn't see this change on earth, and we should have by now. So let me just add some additional text to obscure what was probably the initial meaning in Mark. Ministers routinely do this when they're up there preaching. They will routinely, they skip around so that it says what they want it to say. It's like pizza. It's spiritual pizza, everybody, where if they know the audience doesn't like anchovies may be mentioned, but they will not be featured, right? Anchovies are not the promise.
Yeah.
Extra sauce is the promise. Extra pepperoni is the promise, even though you're not supposed to eat pork. So, you know, that's how it goes. They're really just tailoring the message to probably their pockets.
Right. Now,
you know, they don't want to offend their biggest donors.
Yeah. And here's where they get away with that whole deal and not being critical. What they will do is they'll use conviction. We were talking in our last video about how the black church shuts down critical thinking. But it's a similar deal here, right?
Not just them.
If I can get you to feel bad about something, then that serves as kind of like the heaviness. And so, you know, Christians are not gonna, they will get them, like you said. Like sometimes they'll put a little bit of sin out there, but it's not because they're trying to make the anchovies the feature. It's just because people want to feel like they've got some substance. They want to feel like something. And so they love to give them that superficial conviction. You know, it's almost like making sure people feel like they've got more work to do so they'll come back next time, right? Like, it's weird.
There are ministers that will say they noticed church attendance drop when they didn't preach hellfire and brimstone. Keeping those people scared helps keep them loyal. Jesus is known for saying the truth will set you free. Well, maybe people are learning the truth and they're becoming free at churches, and fewer are going. When you tell me, this guy tells me something like 65% are Christian, but 33% or 30 whatever percent are reading the Bible, that tells me that 60-something% are not Christian. Yeah. That tells me, as I've been saying for years, the world has to be, or the United States, we have to be at least 50% atheist, at least. And that's because I think a great number of people are afraid to say it or don't know that that's what they are.
Right. Yeah, and some of them, all you have to do to bring it out is just ask the basic questions, right? Just look them in the face. So you believe an ancient Jew was born to a virgin, was crucified without committing a crime, was dead for sorry, and don't even do it like that. Don't put the whole story together. Take it one at a time. So you believe this man was born to a virgin, and let them tell you yes. And then you believe they crucified him without committing a crime. They are going to start. I did this once with a date, and I never heard from her again. That's why, gang. And I could tell you everything was going just fine. But that's the way it should be. Because again, I'm not gonna sit here and we're chilling, eating burgers, and then you just mention that you're a Catholic. No, hold on, pause the tape. So wait, and I took her through it, and even though she answered affirmatively, she literally said, well, it's just one of those things where, yeah, you just kind of go with it, and you just kind of I could definitely tell she had never been directly asked those questions, and she felt like she had the answer from it, but she could hear herself and realize this is pretty bugged out stuff. And that's what most Christians get. It's the thing they just get to nod along with. They go to church on Sunday. It all just feels familiar and routine, and nobody ever stops them in their tracks to make them think about, what the faith is actually all about.
Now, you hit a key thing. You said faith. Now, depending on how much of the Bible you're going to read, that believing is enough. Just believing that Jesus is the Son of God, that he came to earth to die for your sins, and you get your golden ticket into heaven. But if you keep reading, you read that faith without works is dead. There's a whole discussion about how important it is to actually do things that promote the Christian religion, that promote human kindness, and basically being out of yourself to help other people. It can be quite beautiful in those sections where it talks about what the works are. The problem is people don't know those exist. The problem is doing something conflicts with doing absolutely nothing. Actually, doing more than the minimum, more accurately, I say, doing more than the minimum conflicts with doing the absolute minimum, which is just believing. Now, I had a discussion with someone about jobs. This video, this guy's complaining because he's a Lowe's, I guess, employee. Someone asked him to bring in a barbecue grill to customer service that they were returning, and he's all pissed off. And I respond maybe the guy had a handicap, or like me, I have a heart condition. There's stuff I just don't do. I have to ask the store people, hey, you think I'm not feeling my best today? Can you have somebody help me load this stuff? Yes. Right. There are people who gladly do it. When I was younger and I had my job where I worked at that ranch where I'm shoveling horse poop for hours and hours a day, it's odd, but that job, I had one complaint the whole time, and it was about this particular horse who was a jerk. So there's a job that some people would say that's at a lower tier than what that guy pulling in the barbecue grill was at, right? Yeah. I stank the whole day until I took a shower. And when I woke up the next morning and started working, it wasn't even 5 minutes before I stunk again, But well, I loved it. I still say that's my favorite job ever. And I've had jobs that take me to travel different places in the world, and they pay for it, and all that's glorious. I meet these interesting people, from here and there, and it's still shoveling crap. Is my favorite job. So the idea that this guy was not getting what he wanted out of his job is a standard, but he's doing a job that isn't where you're supposed to be when you're 35. It's where you're supposed to be when maybe you're 17. or 18. If he plans a career, he might start there, right? I started door-to-door sales with the Olympia Sales Club. I moved on when I was a teenager to shoveling poop, but that's not where I am today. Actually, I'm shoveling poop of a different kind. It's my job. But I help run these big projects, multi-million-dollar projects. I moved on from what he's doing, and he should too at some point. You know, burger flipping, I did that too. I did it for minimum wage. That job prepared me for bigger jobs. I use skills I learned flipping burgers at 13 that I use when I work now. So you're building a skill set. It's cumulative, and you got to respect that. But the person who's leaving the complaint probably isn't old enough to know that yet. No one's probably sat him down and explained, no. This is team building, it's character building, it's customer service. You don't know what was wrong with that guy that he couldn't do it. He might be too busy. He might be a jerk. His wife might be about to have a baby. He might have health issues where he can't do it. Don't assume that he's trying to offend you by asking you to help him. Right?
Yeah, it just sounds like he didn't want to help the person. And also, it sounds like he feels demeaned in his work. Like, I think all of those jobs,
and he might be.
I think all of those jobs are essential jobs, and I think you shouldn't have to move on from them. I think they should be better paying jobs, and you should be able to do these service jobs for your entire life, because somebody has to do them, right? Somebody's always, we're going to need these. We've always needed these jobs, and I just think our economy is all screwed up, and if it wasn't, those jobs would be much more rewarding, and then people wouldn't feel like they're at the bottom of some hierarchy just because they're doing a really, really necessary job. I mean, but yeah.
We can talk about that another time. It'd certainly be interesting. But what I'm trying to relate into, how I'm trying to equate it into Christianity, is there's often a lack of understanding of what your responsibilities are and what's expected of you. And I think Christianity, within the numbers he's sharing today, we can see that again. Again, the average Christian thinks you just have to believe. And so if they're not investing the time in growing and understanding, they're going to stay at that low tier. The Bible even talks about it as much, like the better Christian you are, the more you will have in heaven. You're storing up treasure in heaven. Who knows why you need it? I guess there's an economy up there. But I think that's something that people miss. What ought to be at the forefront is how good it feels to help others when you can. And sometimes it feels even better to help others when you can't, and you figure out a way, because maybe it makes you feel better about your situation. Hey, that guy got out of it because we all pitched in. Maybe the same is true for me. Maybe I can rise above where I am in my little rut here if I just get other people to pitch in. And so for the serious people and serious Christians, and I've met a few, and I do mean few, they tend to be these really remarkable people. Pew probably calls them too. And you can better believe that they were reading their Bible. You know, they're in it, they study it. I've mentioned on the show before, some years ago, I've got one now. I had these really thick, like 1800s Bibles, and I put one up for sale. And this guy bought it. And it's like from 1861 or something. And I said, what are you going to do with it? He goes, I'm going to put it on the display stand under a light. Now, he paid me like $220 for this thing. I'm like, wait, just going to put it up? You're not going to read it? He goes, no. I'll contrast him with the former employer I had. I got her one of those Bibles, 1860 something publishing date. She says, I'm going to use this when I teach. Big difference. It's not just for show for some of them.
I just think this trend though is irreversible.
It's not reversible. No, it'll continue.
The thing is, I honestly think serious Christians, you have to be deaf, dumb, and blind. Like, you really do. You have to not listen to what's really going on or what the message really is. You have to literally pretend that things that don't make sense make sense. And you have to literally not see what's right in front of you. And so I think for the Christians who, again, it's about identity or it's about the relationship and it's all wrapped up in this experience. If you have made it to a certain stage in your life, just from say growing up a Christian to like identifying as a Christian when you're in college, it is going to be very difficult for you to mature into a Bible reading Christian without having serious issue. Now, the other way, like I think the older school, it was like you were supposed to read the Bible and you weren't a real Christian unless you read your Bible. And Bible reading. So you were kind of like that's why it's so hard to like believe Christians of a certain age when they play stupid. Like, boy, you know what's in that Bible. You know that. You know all the nonsense that's in the Bible because you came up on that Bible nonsense like I did. But if you come up on an unbiblical Christianity where it's just relationship and identify and all of that, you can't convert them into people who are serious about the Bible because it's just a monstrous book. And also, I just gotta be honest, like the Bible's traumatic. Like it's a bad book. I know people. It has a great historical significance, and there's a lot of structure and all of that in there. Mm-hmm. But I think for people who grow up believing all that stuff to be true, or dealing with families who are in cults based on that book and all this type of stuff, it can be a very traumatic book. It isn't dry. It isn't exactly the most vibrant like modern reading. It's just not going anywhere. The situation is not going to get any better for Christians.
Well, I'm one of those former Christians, that when I read the Bible, I deconverted. It wasn't something brilliant that a non-believer said to me, right? It wasn't someone being very clever who doubted my faith. It was the careful consideration, investigation that I did on my own, because either I was going to believe it or not. It's that simple. I'm going to really practice this, really take it into my being, or I have to reject it, or parts of it at least, right? Yeah. Was there a King Solomon? Was there a King David? I don't know for sure. Even after reading the Bible, even after studying, if those were real people, because the Bible gets unbelievable in places like creating the universe in 6 days, which is at the beginning of the book, by the way. It's preparing you for the unreasonable. Is King David's life a model for me? I don't know. He was an adulterer. He was a murderer. He did all sorts of unsavory things. He was a thief. He was a bandit. You know what? Clearly not the path I should follow. And as I read the Gospels, Jesus sure seems like a con man to me. So if he existed, I don't think he was the best kind of guy to hang out with. So what do I do? I mean, was it Carrie Ann says?
Yeah, I mean, this is what I'm saying.
Crystal
like,
talked about
this
learning.
is what I'm talking about, deaf, dumb, and blind. God kills everything. God murders everyone.
Mm-hmm. He should have let the pine trees and cockroaches be done, but
God
he didn't.
Authorizes and demands genocide. God has the Bible contains a handbook on slavery. Again, I honestly just get sick of playing this game with Christians. I really do, because it just shows you they want to have their cake and eat it too. They're talking out of both sides of it. They're so serious about their faith, but they refuse to get serious about their faith.
Speaking about that, I listened to, actually watched it, which is rare for me, Dr. Josh McDowell, the son, talked with Frank Turek, and they were talking about transgender stuff. And I had to reply to Josh, letting him know, because he's really good at responding, just so you know, just so everyone knows. I'll let him know I couldn't disagree. I mean, I couldn't agree with Turek. And I said, try having some trans people on who are completely happy with their transition. Because there are lots of success stories. It's not just people who have regret. I would assume the numbers are small.
That's why they look for the person who has regret.
But for me, and I said even have Frank on, and I says, if you need to find out who a few of those people are, let me know how I can get them in contact with you, because we'll find them, right? And we'll send them to you. But if that's not what's wanted because it's not sexy or won't get views, I'll if that's the thinking, I'll wholly disagree, because I think most people think most people think most people are good people, and it's true. Most people are good people. But if you've been vilifying one side for a long time, and you were wrong to do so, and people just thought you were wrong and they thought you were awful for doing it, if you show up one day, hey, look, here's Stephanie. She transitioned 40 years ago, something like that. Talk to her. Get real answers from someone who genuinely didn't have an issue, right? Genuinely didn't have the level of regret that is being referred to by Turek. I think Turek. I think he looks sincere.
But he's a bigot. That's the problem. The problem is
look,
he's a bigot, and people need to just tell him to his face he's a bigot. I mean, look, I get this. I know that that's a standard argument. I think we've done that for years. I just think that experiment has failed. That's just me. It's just me. Me personally, like I think it's a lot, because this is the game they play, right? The game they play is, let me pretend this is not a misunderstanding, right? They go look for that extreme example. Yeah, they're bad faith actors. But if it was a good faith actor, if it was somebody who was just genuinely misunderstood, or let's say wasn't exposed, that would be the move. It's just in that particular case, I think those guys are 100% bad actors. Yeah. Let's go ahead.
No, in defense of Dr. Sean McDowell, I think he makes an effort to be fair. I think he makes an effort to be charitable. Is it the strongest effort?
I don't know as much about him.
I don't know.
I'm thinking about Frank Turek. I know Frank Turek.
Oh, Turek? No, Turek. I hadn't thought about Turek being a bigot, but maybe that is the case. I don't know how, or he's playing to the bigotry in others, which makes him a consummate manipulator, which I think even he would have to agree with if that question was posed to him. Do you manipulate people with what you say? And is that intentional? Going back to
that's the problem. That's the problem. Is anybody but this is where I look. It's in the job description. People don't want to be real candid about this, but it's in the job description. If you are a minister, if you are an apologist, if you are an advocate for religion, you're a bigot, because your job is to get people to be serious about something that contains the bigotry, and you know it. They all know it. There's not a single person, again, because they don't ever say I don't know. None of them. You cannot poll a single American Christian and say, do you think it is okay for homosexual people to have relationships? And they will say, I don't know. None of them are going to say that no. Now, there are a lot who will make excuses for why the Bible says what it does, but they all know what it says. It's the same thing like if you poll them on atheism. They will tell you, oh, I'm fine with atheists. I don't hate atheists. I don't hate anybody. Jesus is the reason for the season. I love everybody. Ask them if they're okay with godlessness. It's just word games to them. They know that they're not okay with atheists. Why? Because that's the last thing they would ever be. Why do you think they're committed to life, to Jesus? They're basically telling you, I cannot imagine being an atheist. Being an atheist sounds like the worst thing. Because again, that's the compromise. That's the deal. Like when they sign with Jesus on the dotted line, that's what they're signing up for. It is like signing up to play football and then telling us that you signing up for the football team means you're going to be the point guard of the basketball team. It just doesn't. It just doesn't. By definition, when you say I give my life to Christ, you're anti-atheist because you are literally proclaiming that it's not okay to not believe in God. So how are you going to turn around and then say, oh, yeah, I committed my life to the God team, but I think it's perfectly fine for you to be an atheist? It's just what it is it's social lubricant. We all share a planet. We have irreconcilable differences. Honestly, we really do. We really have differences that cannot be reconciled. And to be quite frank, we can't get along in the aggregate, but we have to get along in the interpersonal, right? It's like cats and dogs. They ain't never gonna play too well together, right? So, but in your house, your cat and your dog have to learn to coexist. You see what I'm saying? That's right. And that's what it is. So there's all these things that we say, all these rituals that we have that allow us to sort of just, take the tension down so that we can get along with each other. But in the aggregate, like, Christians and atheists ain't ever going to play in the same sandbox. Well, it's just not gonna happen. But we're way off topic. Let's see what these guys have to say. This is fun.
5% of people believe that people are born sinners, and a third of people attending church service, which is already a pretty small amount. What was it? 35% of Americans are going to church now. So gang. A third of that aren't considered true born again Christians. Which I won't open the can of worms with the true born again Christians, but I got a comment. And I knew this, and I hadn't really just like vocalized it. And I wish I would have during the Braxton video. But the whole concept with a true believer is more problematic for the Christian than anything else. Because if that is possible, to believe you are saved and then to actually not be, then how does one not give that possibility to themselves as someone who considers themselves a true believer? Do you see the problem there? But I'll skip over that. Let's get to the 55% thing. I agree with this.
This is a big problem, though. That is fun, but he skipped it. We'll let him.
The reason that only 55% of evangelical Christians believe that they are born sinners is because the other 45% have a morality that has surpassed the Bible, and they have gotten there because the church did get too afraid to preach this thing that is so clearly ridiculously harmful. Yes, I agree. Many churches are going away from the actual scriptures, from the actual doctrine, because the actual scriptures and doctrine are too offensive. It is very ridiculous to talk about a physical Satan, an enemy of God.
They're either oppressive or they're just not up to they're not good explanations.
Of Christians that God made, that God knew would fall, that God has given ownership of the earth to, and allows to mess with you, the believer. He has actively created this situation. And if you think about it too much, it becomes highly problematic to the problem of suffering or free will or a billion other things that anyone should take issue with of this Christian religion. So how do you get around that? How do you keep your church numbers up? How do you keep the offerings coming in? You stop talking about the problematic parts, and it becomes Jesus is so good, Jesus loves you, Jesus teaches to forgive, pleasantry, golden rule, turn the other cheek, walk 10 miles, etc. This is what I have referred to many times in the videos as Starbucks Christianity. This is just the feel good, encourage yourself, almost a form of motivational speaking at these churches, etc. And I agree, it's not doctrinal, but it is a response, I believe, in part to the modern Christian who has a morality concept that has evolved with the times that no longer aligns with the preaching of the Bible.
Yes. And gang, I'm gonna be honest with you too. Like a lot of it is, I often think I play more of a doctrinal role in the band than the preacher does, because so many Christians choose where they go based on the worship style, right? And then when you get into, again, they're not reading the Bible seriously. They're obviously not going to read all that other stuff about the theology. They care very little about this like nuanced sermon series these pastors want to do. Their theology comes in large part from the music, gang. It comes from the other things in the culture where they get the messages. Even when you hear, I think as a lot of believers, I don't think it's just the musicians that this happens to, but even when you hear certain things in scripture, it reminds you of the song. You know the song, and then when you read it in the passage, you're like, "Oh shit, that comes from this psalm." Or
connecting the dots.
You're like
connecting the dots.
You halfway forget it's a song. Like very good people could tell you. Everybody knows "Amazing Grace," how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me, right? Mm-hmm. How many people know what scripture that comes from? I mean, like nobody, like people don't. So what am I getting at? Like, that is really a lot of who's in the sanctuary. And I hate to say this, but like, this is the way it has to be now because it's competitive. And so a lot of those churches, the more serious ones, those are the ones that are drying up the fastest. Because there's no charisma, there's probably no good music. Sometimes there aren't even instruments. So you have to be about that life. You have to be willing to show up on Sunday minutes, and we're gonna sit here and sing these dry ass hymns. And then this man is really gonna get up here and preach to you for 45 minutes about the deepities of the theology. Yeah, them churches are aging and aging and aging because there's just no new life into them. The churches that are growing are the churches that are competing with Planet Shakers, and they're playing popular Christian music. Like when you get in there on Sunday morning, I'll be telling them all the time, like in the worship team, like you have to be playing the hits. Like it's popular music that you either play it or you're not. So you got to play that. You got to have a certain worship style. You got to have all of that, or else people are not going to get the experience that they associate with like the powerful emotion that that hit that they're looking for on Sunday morning.
I would like to suggest a future episode, and audience, feel free to make your suggestions. We should do a Christian music episode, like the Jesus Christ is my N-word song, and other times where they've turned a rap song or something like that into a church song. The South Park, those guys are brilliant. There was an episode where Cartman and some friends decided to make a Christian band so that they can become super rich. And it was pointed out that you just take a pop song and where it says baby, say Jesus.
Yeah.
and then it'll be yes.
Yeah, and you could do the other way. Like we used to take songs when I went to Cat School, when I was in I guess that was like 6th grade. It would be me and this other guy named Jason. I had a classmate named Jason, and we both had a crush on this girl named Casey. And so we would be in school mass, and we would do this thing. We stand next to each other, and every time they sing Jesus, we would put Casey. We would sing Casey instead, and it works. It works just the same. Matter of fact, that's what somebody had said is actually people who are serious, like. It kind of makes church feel weird because they realize that church songs are really becoming like love songs. They're like pop songs. They're like R&B songs. A lot of them, even in a way, they're songs. They're the type of music you associate with intimacy and club and all it is. Mm-hmm. And now you're like singing them same things about Jesus. And for a lot of people, it doesn't really feel quite right. But they're the ones who are overthinking it, and most people don't think about it that much.
The fact that we are born broken, that we are born sick and sinful, that our nature is hateful and wicked and depraved. People don't like that. Broken. It's an awful place to start from. How hopeless, how damning. Well, no, Brandon, you don't understand. The hope then is in Jesus. Jesus is the one who gave you that nature. So again, people have figured this out, and the only way to keep the small amount of people still coming into church and the small amount of people still reading their Bibles is to water this
arsonist.
down more and more and more. So we're not going to watch any more of the video because I just watched it and it really just gets into, oh, the culture crept into the church and it's attacking homosexuality amongst other things, etc. And I just think it's unnecessary, and I don't think that his answers here are good for what are the implications of this. And so that's how I want to end the video. I want to talk about what are the implications of this. Church is good for some people for some things. I'm not going to deny that. Religion is good for some people for some things. But my position is more, I recognize that there's good from it, but there is a natural byproduct that seems to me to be unavoidable. Maybe not in an individual, but definitely in a group at large. And within that mode, I think that the negative outweighs the positive. So can someone get a sense of community from church? For sure. Can someone be encouraged by their small group? Absolutely. Can someone's fear of death be alleviated by believing that there's an afterlife? Of course it can. But the opposite of all of those things is also true.
So this is kind of interesting about what I was just saying too, because what I was saying is like, you know, we have real irreconcilable differences at the group level, yet we have to make it work at the individual level. And what he's saying is kind of adding to that, where it is very selfish. The religious, the whole religious enterprise is very much about personal benefit. And so the benefit actually only accrues at the individual level, yet at the societal level, at the social level, I think it's largely a negative. The other thing is, I think context matters, gang. You know what? If the KKK was just a small backwoods group that, you know, got together in some town of less than, 3,000 people in rural Tennessee 3 times a year, had a cookout, talked about how much they hate black people, and went home, nobody would know or care, right? They became a group of national prominence that was ubiquitous, seemingly everywhere. They infiltrated the highest levels of business and government and society, and they absolutely terrorized black people. Period, end of story. And so once that became the context, yeah, we had to shut that down. And we continue to have to fight them every turn. Every time they pop up a little bit, nope. Oh, another one popped up. Nope. Oh, some imitators popped up. Oh, we got the Proud Boys. No, all of them. All the KKK, the neo-Nazis, anybody that's in that flavor, we shut that down. Why? Because we know the context. And this is what the deal is with Christianity. We live in a time, again, we saw how y'all responded to the pandemic. Look at what is going on with our queer community. Look at what's going on with the repealing of women's rights. Look at what is going on with this conservative Supreme Court. Christians, your time is up. You had a chance to show us what you would do if you gained a modicum of influence, and y'all drove the car into a tree. You don't get to drive next time. You don't get to be the drivers anymore. You get to put your asses in the back, and we will tell you when we get where we're going.
It's been 2,000 years. They had time.
You've had time. You've had enough time. Your time is up. Our time is now, like John Cena would say. It's just that's and so we can't afford to play anymore. We can't afford to just be like, oh, it's okay, and maybe they'll come around, and I think eventually we can make it good, and what if they're LGBTQ accepting and they like black? It's too late for all of that. It's too late for all of that, and there's entirely too much bad stuff happening in the name of Jesus. In the name of Jesus. So we have now to speak out against this in a more public, organized, social way, because we are in a time where we need to get religion off our necks because it's traumatizing us. It is a problem. And so I think that is another thing that is it's gonna be a major shift. It's like me personally, I think I speak for a lot of people, I'm just not willing to wait out and run out the clock my whole life. I don't know. I may have to live in a democracy, theocracy, hybrid thing or whatever we're doing right now.
No, you don't.
The rest
of my life.
Oh
You
yeah,
can
well I'm
move.
trying to move. But yeah, but I'm definitely gonna be fighting back against it, right? It is definitely not going to be because I went down without a fight. I'm not gonna put my life on in this hold pattern. But yeah, all right.
Need religion to do good things. And because of that, I'm also not then tied to all of the negative side effects, the judgment, the shame, the guilt, the self-righteousness, the denial of certain facts and truths and sciences, etc. Like, have I not given a good enough case in some of my videos on the potential harm of these religions? And don't worry, there's more coming. The mental health within the Christian community, purity culture, childhood fear and indoctrination. I mean, the list goes on forever. And if it were true, it would still be terrible, but at least it might be considered necessary. But it's not true, which makes it unnecessary. So we can do better. So what are the pros and cons of the decline of Christianity in America? I'd love to just hear your guys' answer to that in the comments. I'll give you some brief thoughts and then we'll close this out. What could be the good that could come from it? Well, the more people that deconvert from ideas that tell them what morality is and tell them what truth is and blind them from seeking out evidence and using logic and rationality, ideally those people are going to make a shift into logic and rationality. And the more people that are making decisions based off logic and rationality, I believe are going to have the potential, it could go sideways, to do more good. When we have people in government and people in positions of authority that are looking at things scientifically or using the data, I think we're going to end up usually, typically, or at least possibly with better outcomes. Look at the Scandinavian countries. They're some of the most secular countries out there, and by many, 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 many metrics, they are some of the happiest individuals, the healthiest, and there's a lot of different things that we can tie to this, and it's a video for its own time. But when you...
All right, here's another thing I think you should think about quickly, which is I think that a big part of the implications of this trend, gang, is really our life story. That we are in the time of coming of age. Let's say the average person, let's just give them 65 years for whatever reason, 65, 70 years, where the shift for most people born in that window is going to be that the world becomes significantly less evangelical during your lifetime. And so that means there really is. So I think about it this way. There came a time where people expected that if you got married, you were going to be together the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And then there came a time where there was a really good probability that if you got married, you were going to get divorced. But we still treated it like you're probably going to spend the rest of your lives together. Then there became a time where it was more likely than not that your marriage was going to end up in divorce because it just came more than 50%. And we still treated it like that was somehow weird or wrong, or that was somehow like a failing in life, right? And now we've mostly gotten to a place where, like, we wish you all the best. We hope you'll be together for life. We'd all be happy for you. But we pretty much expect that most marriages are going to fail, right? And that doesn't mean none of them are going to. That doesn't mean people are still together for life and we're still happy for them. But we've shifted our expectations such that it is now considered very reasonable for people to get divorced or remarried or whatever. And I think that hopefully is a big part of this shift. Is like society needs to wake up and realize it's really likely that people, they're raised in the church, they start in a religious family, and at some point in their life, they're no longer reading the Bible, they're no longer identifying with the fundamental claims of the faith, they're no longer attending church on Sunday, and at some point they just stop identifying as a Christian. It's just going to get to that point where there's just so many people that applies to, that it's no longer a phenomenon that you can treat as weird. Like, you can't act like that's just something weird, right? Because a lot of us probably feel that way. I know I feel that way a lot of times. Like, there's something weird about me and my family. Why am I the one who deconverted? Why is right? And now I'm like, if I count the younger cousins coming up behind me and da-da-da-da-da, like, there's just going to come a time where it's just not that weird. It's just, yeah.
Look, my family, I have a family full of believers. I have one aunt who is an agnostic.
Great way to put it, Crystal.
I'm the atheist. Everybody else identifies as Christian. They're fine. We're fine. My aunt will throw it in people's faces. I tend not to. I just, I don't view things spiritually. Everything doesn't have a spiritual reason or spiritual outcome. For me, I'm more facts based. Show me, or here, let me show you. And so much of our lives and interactions has nothing to do with religion. And that, I think, more people need to realize. So little of your life has to do with religion. Me helping other people to the best of my ability isn't tied to a religion. I'm not trying to store up treasures in heaven. I need to focus more on storing them up down here, that's for sure. But I'm just a generous person. That's my nature. Growing up, people were extremely generous with me to help me. And I feel, wow, that felt really wonderful to be helped. So I do my best to be that guy for other people. It's not tied to a reward other than the moment itself. The person who was living in this room, and it wasn't Big Wayne's grandma, but the person who was living in this room for 3 years was living in her car. And when she was able to get on her feet and move out a couple of months ago, it's her victory, but I still felt quite proud. She changed enough things to where she got to that level to where it was time to move on. And it was a joyful thing. It wasn't sad, but it had zero to do with Jesus, which she believed in. Zero to do with him for me.
Yeah.
So,
Crystal, that's a good point. Once the Republican Party takes over something as the talking point, you can forget it. It's lost all definition and meaning. So I think that's kind of what I was asking about earlier. I think that is a good point. I hadn't thought about it that way. But the idea.
Pocket Locker, I can't hear you. You're frozen. Everything is frozen. Hello. Be right back. Frozen. Well, I guess I'm still here, people. You got me. Okay. Thank you, Carrie. And by the way, thank you all for putting in comments. It's really great. I don't get to respond to them very much because my attention gets pulled to one place or another. I think that we live in a remarkable time because we have the internet and we can watch Christianity, other religions sort of fade away. I think there's a huge benefit to the fact that they are fading away. We can now work together as communities to create a generalized morality, if you will, a moral system. I think to some degree it's already there. We know it's wrong to steal. We know it's wrong to beat people for no apparent freaking reason, along with a whole host of other things. We understand these things. If the goal becomes a better humanity, as opposed to reaching some celestial, heaven in the sky or another dimension, if it literally becomes about our fellow human beings on this planet or the care of the planet itself and the creatures on the planet and taking care of the water and things like that, if it becomes about that, we have a better system. We do. A system that will recognize people have failings, but it will also recognize that people have power. And I don't mean power to rule over another person or any of this kind of power, but I mean, hey, there's a problem we see developing on the horizon. Let's take our resources and work together to create the solutions that we need. If you've watched Star Trek, or I'd say even Star Wars, but more so this is evident in Star Trek, that religions weren't in charge. religions weren't the most important thing in people's lives. People used their intellect to solve problems and conflicts. They had to sort of agree. Yes, there's still that adventure element where you have to conquer whatever adversity is there. Yes, but ultimately, Star Trek was about exploring new worlds. I would submit to you that the new people in your lives are the new worlds. Learning to understand them, what makes them tick, and you really have something when that's where your focus is. When it's not about Jesus coming back, when it's not about I don't know the tenets of Islam at all, really. So, but that's probably not the answer either, right? I can't dismiss it out of hand. I don't know, but if it's based on Judaism, if it's based on Christianity, I kind of think I might know where it's going. And though a system like that may work for billions of people, most of their lives is probably not that system. Most of their lives is probably the general set of basic ideas that gets humanity through. And as we move along, we start to shed more of those ideas. Like slavery is almost completely wiped out on this planet. It is not wiped out on this planet. But as time moved on, fewer and fewer people thought it was a good idea. Fewer and fewer people were willing to participate. Fewer and fewer people were willing to maintain. Let me look at some of the comments here. I'm doing this on my phone, folks. I apologize. I don't know how to see them all. Liz Allen, Captain of Deep Space Nine, had to play along with the religion, as I recall. I don't think I saw too many episodes of that. One of my roommates is like an expert on Star Wars, Star Trek. He can tell you everything. They need to be honest about their book not being in favor of human interests. I can agree with that. There was a conversation that I listened to between Dr. Josh McDowell and what's that guy's name? Greg Kokel. And it came about that they spoke about slavery. Okay, your back pocket locker. It came about that Greg Kokel and Dr. Josh McDowell were speaking about slavery, and McDowell is trying to get out of Kokel. How do you have that part of the discussion with a non-believer? And Kokel did a very good job of talking about some of the ills. But as you might imagine, he stopped just short of condemning the Bible on its stance. So he's sort of, I don't know, it's a move that could be in the Fast and the Furious if it was in a car, if he'd done it in a car. You see how close he got to the edge? And he just went skidding along the edge, sort of drifted, and then it was beautiful the way he pulled out of it. I'm sure other apologists might have thought that, but I had to write Dr. McDowell and say, I can't agree. I can't agree. He's leaving out the worst parts. But that's what we see. And I think that might be another reason, Pocket Locker, why these churches are emptying out, because people maybe to some degree are Googling and they know what's in that book and they know what they philosophically, morally, and even spiritually.
Well, yeah, like you said, the internet. I mean, all a person has to do is say, "What does the Bible? What Google? What does the Bible say about this? What does the Bible say about that?" And you know, it's kind of right there. And then the Christians are constantly reminding you. So this kind of touches on pragmatic Crystal's point about the Republican Party, which is a subtle one, because the idea is, once the brand becomes associated with the baddies, right? The idea for most Christians is that, and I believe it's a feedback loop, we give people self-esteem for being Christians. We make them feel good about it. We make them feel like they're special. Even if we don't believe, we just play along. We play along with their lie, right? They participate in this thing that you don't believe is true, but you will literally still treat them, even though they make the center of their life something you do not believe. You will treat them like they're an honest person. Think about that. Just think about that. You will literally treat someone that you think is lying to you like they are an extraordinarily honest person. You will treat someone who believes that most of us, including you as an unbeliever, are going to hell like they're an extraordinarily graceful and kind person. You will treat a person who gives 10% of their income to a cult like they are an incredibly independent, smart financial, all of this stuff. So what does it do? It makes them feel like they're great and they're special because they're Christian. So what Crystal is talking about is now all of a sudden being a Christian starts to be a red flag. Because we're like, wait, does that mean you don't believe in equal rights for the LGBT community? Does that believe you think women are inferior to men? Like, does this mean you're an apologist for slavery? And it doesn't.
Here's your belief packet. Here's your belief packet.
Here's your manual, right? And right. And this is just the frequently asked questions, right? Every website has the FAQs, the frequently asked questions. These are frequently asked questions. But now, right, because of the association with this crazy conservative political movement, for the average American evangelical, that becomes what we're associating with you. And I do think that's part of it. Like, in other words, they're suffering a lot of reputational damage by association with this Republican Party. And I think it's merited. I think what you have to, this is what I mean, for Christians to be reflective, and again, if you're this reflective, you're probably no longer going to be a Christian. But you have to acknowledge that the reason the Republican Party used Christianity as their brand is because it fit. It fit the bill for their particular brands of bigotry, for the ways they wanted to go about things. If it wasn't in other words, if it wasn't in the book, y'all wouldn't have been such a great voter pool for them.
Well, like a parasite, it's easier to take over another organism than it is to create your own. So that's all. I mean, I saw some video, it was a while ago, about the Republican Party's platform. There were things that were voted against, but they passed it to make it part of the platform anyway.
Exactly.
Now, to me, again, I've talked about, I'm probably going to end up being a politician in the next 10 years, probably. But I would have to say to my political party, I'm not going to go along with this if I don't agree with it. And I would have to tell while I'm campaigning, look, the party line is this, but I'm not doing that. I'm not doing that. I refuse. I think that's the wrong way forward. And I think there are a number of people who would agree with me and respect me for that. And the rest of them who didn't like that about me would have to see in what other ways might I still be an ideal candidate. Clearly, I'm not an ideal candidate in every way for them. But there will be ways. Go ahead.
This is so interesting about this Republican Party and how they can contribute to how they're contributing to the downfall of Christianity, because
Thank you.
The reality is becoming those people can't get elected, right? So okay, like me and Liz Cheney don't see eye to eye on pretty much anything, right? But Liz Cheney found herself in a dogfight against a MAGA retard, right? So I had to send Liz Cheney a few dollars. Now, gang, I'm not rich. I probably sent the woman $5 or $10 or, a couple times, whatever. But it's like, it was like, I'm doing what I can to help. We don't agree on everything, but I would much rather you be here than to see this Senate swing even more towards MAGA. But gang, think about that. Even with the support of clearly being the more reasonable, moderate Republican that we can all sit down and have a conversation with, even with support from independents, even with support from progressives and leftists, they can't beat the MAGA people. So then what's happening is there's like this feedback of radicalization, because all the people who do speak up and they're like, oh, well, I'm just not going to toe the party line because y'all have kind of lost it on this. They get rid of them real quickly. And so it's weird, right? Like even like the people like Mike Pence, right? Because Mike Pence is scary. I ain't messing with Mike Pence. You know, Mike Pence is I would not be happy with Mike Pence elected anything. But Mike Pence is at least he's a genuine believer. He really believes in Jesus, and he wants to be the Lord's candidate and wants America to be godly and da 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 da. And again, like he can't get enough of a MAGA bump to get over the big red retard. So it is an interesting thing where it's like they are sort of redefining what it means to be conservative, what it means to be part of the evangelical Christian movement, even though the leader of all of this, Donald Trump, is not evangelical at all. And we all know that. But ironically, he might in the end do more to destroy Christianity than we could do as atheists.
Well, I don't know that that's the case. I think for him, he can just avoid answering questions. Oh, I can't tell you what my favorite scripture is. Faith is deeply personal. When there's 1 Peter 3:15, which he should always be ready to tell people the reason for his joy, right? Why he's so happy to be a Christian. But he doesn't know that, and he can't do that. There's a lot he doesn't have to know because the people, I guess, in a way, writers know this. You project certain things in what you're writing, and you, instead of telling your audience, you let them work on that. You let them figure it out in their mind, or you let them fill in the blank. I used to write screenplays, and the screenplays when I began writing were very different than the last ones I wrote in the fact that I described less what characters looked like, because one of the criticisms I got was, to some degree, let the audience fill it in their minds, because a casting person is going to put this person in there.
That's true.
And it's to some degree, it's sort of nondescript. We can watch villains in a show. I think a show that does villains well is Foundation, where the guy that plays Day, the character's name is Cleon, but Day is a specific designation he has. So that character is a great villain because you see him trying to sway people to his side. And he doesn't think he's wrong all the time, but there are times he knows he's wrong, and he is willing to deceive the people around him. He is willing to deceive billions upon billions of people because he perceives that it is important that he maintains power. And through him being in power, that means that there must be unity. Just like as a byproduct. Yeah. Hey, I'm in power. There must be unity.
Enter the megachurch pastor and Christian apologist here, because people are sitting back and watching their whole song and dance with the flirtation with this radical right wing and this whole thing. And but people, I think to this guy's point, people are seeing, and to your point, people see that, and it makes great evil characters, but it doesn't make great all-loving saviors, right?
My point is, Trump is like that character.
Right, yeah.
He's every bit of motivation is actually selfish, but there are people who don't see that. Look at all the effort he's making to come to the aid and comfort of the things I care about. But I marvel because, like Jesus, he had all this time to fix things that he didn't bother fixing. Right. And you want to support him again? He says, I'll fix it this time. But you didn't fix it last time. Right. You didn't even try. It wasn't on your radar. It wasn't important to you, even though you said it was.
Right.
And that's what the general population needs to realize. I don't care if it's Trump or Jesus. Wait a second. Jesus said he'll fix it God will fix it for you. All you got to do is believe. All you got to do is have faith. And wait, where the hell did that come from? I didn't need faith before. You just said I just had to believe he'll do it. Is if it's just simple belief, or then faith, where I start giving up my control, right? There are real answers, but the real answers are uncomfortable. The real answers are do it yourself, come up with a group of people to support you and help you, and do it yourself. Get a loan from the bank, do it yourself, come up with a plan, consult people who are smarter about it than you are, and then get those people to look at what you created as a plan, tweak that plan so that it looks like it's rock solid, and then go for it. But if all you're going to do is fold your hands together and ask God in Jesus' name, I'll say it, you're fucked.
You're fucked. All right, that's a perfect spot change to go back to.
Not going to deny that religion is good for some people, for some things. But my position is more, I recognize that there's good from it, but there is a natural byproduct that seems to me to be unavoidable. Maybe not in an individual, but definitely in a group at large. And within that mode, I think that the negative outweighs the positive. Right, so can someone get a sense of community from church? For sure. Can someone be encouraged by their small group? Absolutely. Can someone's fear of death be alleviated by believing that there's an afterlife? Of course it can. But the opposite of all of those things is also true. You don't need religion to do good things. And because of that, I'm also not then tied to all of the negative side effects, the judgment, the shame, the guilt, the self-righteousness, the denial of certain facts and truths and sciences, etc. Like, have I not given a good enough case in some of my videos on the potential harm of these religions? And don't worry, there's more coming. The mental health within the Christian community, purity culture, childhood fear and indoctrination. I mean, the list goes on forever. And if it were true, it would still be terrible, but at least it might be considered necessary. But it's not true, which makes it unnecessary. So we can do better. So what are the pros and cons of the decline of Christianity in America? I'd love to just hear your guys' answer to that in the comments. I'll give you some brief thoughts and then we'll close this out. What could be the good that could come from it? Well, the more people that deconvert from ideas that tell them what morality is and tell them what truth is and blind them from seeking out evidence and using logic and rationality, ideally those people are going to make a shift into logic and rationality. And the more people that are making decisions based off logic and rationality, I believe are going to have the potential, it could go sideways, to do more good. When we have people in government and people in positions of authority that are looking at things scientifically or using the data, I think we're going to end up usually, typically, or at least possibly with better outcomes. Look at the Scandinavian countries. They're some of the most secular countries out there, and by many, 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 many metrics, they are some of the happiest individuals, the healthiest, and there's a lot of different things that we can tie to this, and it's a video for its own time. But when you let go of the idea of a God and of prayer doing anything, and of faith filling the gaps, etc., it creates action. But again, we won't get into a country comparison right now, but the stats are out there, and I'd encourage you to look them up from yourself from objective sources. Whether it's disease, death, divorce, depression, anxiety, etc., they seem to all be higher all amongst religious countries in general. And it almost doesn't matter what the religion is. And I think that there's good reason and correlation for those things. So my hope would be that as we get less religious, we get more rational. And as we get more rational, we get healthier. But I recognize atheism, rationality, logic, none of it just automatically means more moral. You can have an atheist with horrible morals, and you can have an atheist with amazing morals or a high sense of ethic or whatever you want to call it. You can also have that with the believer. Even if objective morality were true, it doesn't mean that people objectively follow it. So I don't understand the claim that believers are just going to be better. They're not. They commit crime at the same rate. They divorce at the same rate, in some places higher. They have abortions at the same rate, in some cases higher, because of the shame and guilt that would follow for premarital sex and things of that nature. I mean, it's just ridiculous to say that you're a better person because you're a believer. You're not. People are people are people are people. A fear I have is that in the short term, why we find out how to replace religion, that we're going to end up in a middle ground that can be quite unhealthy for people, especially why many people are still religious. I think that's kind of the spot we're in now. Look at the comments on my deconversion videos and things like that, and listen to the people sharing their stories about how hard it is, what their parents are doing to them, the people that have been kicked out, the people that have lost loved ones, the people that are not allowed to see their children anymore from their other spouse, the people that have lost their friendships they've had their whole life and now are so lonely and depressed. Eventually, if no one were to believe in this religion, I think we get away from that. But is there going to be this middle ground, this transition period where I think a lot of people are going to hurt for a long period of time? I do. And that's part of the mission of this channel, is to help people cope with that and understand that and find the right communities and come out in the proper way and things of this nature, to set people up for the best chance of success outside of the grasp of religion. So I fear that, and I don't know how long that transition period would be. The other thing I fear is that what it's going to do to the Christian right, what it's going to do to the radicalized versions of Christianity as they hang on in their death spiral. Will it make them go further? Will they see it as the end times and become more bold? Will they see it as a rallying cry for more control and more influence, etc.? I think that in that regard, it will get worse before it gets better. But if there can be a place where religion has been gone and is gone to such a norm that we're not dealing with the consequences of the fallout of that religion, I believe there we will have a better place than we have today. We're not at the tipping point yet. 68% is still very high, and the percentage of that really believe is extremely vocal and large. And so I think it's going to be quite a while before those scales really get tipped more evenly and then really start to even go the other direction. Tell me your thoughts. Is all of this going to be...
All right, so I will say that these are the two of the, concerns I think are legitimate. One is, and it is where I think communities, like, there's some people need community in there, because regardless of how you feel about it, or what you may have been normally, it's like, if you're part of a church, then you're part of a big community. That whole thing becomes very intense. And so if you're gonna walk away from that or leave that is gonna definitely feel like a sense of loss. And so it really is important to find a new community. That's why I think atheist community building is really important. Even on social media, like, I think people are too quick to denigrate parasocial relationships, or the type of type of thing you might have with a creator or something like that, or just the friendships, the real friendships and meaningful relationships you can have online. A lot of people find, you could fall in love with somebody easily, that you meet online without meeting them in person. So I
living proof.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of us have been there. So, I think that's important, because I think a lot of times you just wouldn't have those people in your life if not for social media. So I guess I'm saying, I think that if you don't, denigrate your ability or like undermine your own ability to form relationships, you'll be able to make community with people in a way that you probably wouldn't have been able to, 30 years ago or whatever, before we had the internet and social media. And then the other thing is, and I keep saying this about a lot of the groups you hear them go after, especially if you listen to the way that they go after the queer community, they talk about them being demon possessed. They talk about them pushing a lifestyle that is not godly, that goes against God's word, and all of this type of stuff. And I always say, well,
and grooming. They accuse them of grooming too.
Yeah. Well, I always say, well, what do you think they would do if the actual movement was to get rid of God in the public sphere? What if you think, instead of it just being if the group that we were talking about was atheist, if we were actually, in other words, what I'm getting at is, they are implying that people are ungodly when those people's identity has nothing to do with God. I think if we were actually saying, no, it's God's head on the chopping block, we're trying to get rid of Jesus, you would see them really going crazy, which is actually why I think it's so important that the mainstream media and the news and people like that cover it, because those are the people who can lead the charge to sort of provide some shelter through normalization. Those are the people who say, look, this is happening, these people are here. I don't think that that's a silver bullet, and I don't want to blame them, but I do think they have a critical role to play that they're not playing. Like, this is a thing they're not talking about. They're not covering the Great Awakening, as some of us like to call it. They're not covering this thing. And yeah, I just think it'd be a big help if they did. So those are two concerns. You definitely need to build a sense of community, and I definitely think the right wingers and conservative people are gonna go. They're gonna white knuckle this thing before they let go. But I think that's why those of us who can have to come out, because if you come out, if people know that this applies to you, if they know that you're an atheist, it can, I think, hopefully push us over the edge of normalization too fast for things to get too ugly. That's the kind of thing that people don't talk about. So, like, there's always violence against the queer community. It's unfortunately always been with us. But if you notice, I don't think there was an extreme amount of violence around the acceptance of gay marriage. It was something that was accepted, it was legal in places, and then once most people were on board with it, we just did it. It was like, oh yeah, the Supreme Court legalized gay marriage. All right, cool. And everybody went about their business. And we should just be boom, hit them with the sudden okie doke.
I think what's really at play, the question that needs to be asked and isn't being asked, and you can do this on a one-to-one basis. Do you really want to limit the rights of other people to enjoy their own lives?
Right.
Right? The trans issue. And we have people in our audience that can speak intelligently on this, more so than I could. If you have bodily autonomy, if let's say the person who is opposed to any person being able to transition, if the person that you're having the discussion with believes they have bodily autonomy, but doesn't want it for someone else, let them wrestle with that. Let them wrestle with that. Because most people, not all, most people don't want to be a bigot. And in that moment, they will know they are. My neighbor's 88 years old. She grew up in Georgia. She'll talk to me about racism back when she was a child. But there were certain people in her county in Georgia that were not racist and would never be. The guy her father worked for had to buy land because somebody was unwilling to sell it to a black person. So he bought it and then he sold it to him. That guy who bought the land from my friend's dad probably knew that if I ask the question, do you really think that you should infringe on his right to own property? Do you really think that's necessary? The answer didn't matter because he had a solution, right? His solution was, I'll buy it for him, and then he can buy it from me. It's that simple. Sometimes the solution is that simple, but we as atheists, when that is the issue, we have to focus on showing that person a mirror, holding up a mirror to their face. What makes you think you have the right or the power to oppress other people? Then what's the benefit?
Yeah, the problem is the book. The problem is the book is the why they oppress other people, and then but yeah, it's divorced from the damn book.
Okay, there's a great question in there somewhere. If the Bible didn't say that homosexuality was a sin, would you be opposed at all to people being gay?
That's a good question for them to answer.
The Bible is opposed to mixed fabrics, too. The Bible is opposed to working on the Sabbath. You could die for it. You could be killed for it. There's a whole slew of things out of those 613 commandments that person does not know about or care about. And you could ask those questions in a way where you're setting them up to agree with you, even though the Bible disagrees with them. By the way, that clicking noise might be this chair.
Oh, it's
so. Yeah. If I figure if I can't hear the noise, I must be the noise. Um, something of that nature. And I apologize if it's
No,
uncomfortable
no,
for
I
some
think
people.
it's a buzz coming from your, I think, a headset or something. But
That might be. These are Bluetooth. They're only so
yeah,
good.
yeah.
Let me shut this fan off in here. But go ahead, Pocket
But
Lock.
yeah, no, we're good. We're good. Let's wrap it up because I gotta get to my meeting and we're through the video. So
Okay.
yeah, no, this was good. This is these are these are encouraging numbers, right?
Hmm.
And it is interesting to think about how you could potentially, like I said, I think the good thing to take from it, and maybe that you could share with with believers rather, is that this is happening. It's like Uncle Bobby always says, this change is happening whether you want it to or not.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people may not be clued in as to the fact that a lot of people are actually leaving the church, they're leaving their faith, they're not taking the claims that seriously. And I think that may invite them to examine where they're at in a way that they
Hmm.
haven't before, because so many people just don't realize that it's even possible.
Yeah. I think ultimately Pew's going to get better numbers on this because they'll ask. Maybe I should write to them and say, "Hey, how are you determining whether or not someone is a Christian? How do you know what Christianity means to them?" Because like I say, I've had so many different conversations with people around the world, and I'm told like atheists are like what 15% or something like that, and maybe with the nuns included, we're 29% or something like that. I'm like, there's no way. There's no way I'd meet this many atheists if those numbers are true. The
Mm.
numbers have to be higher. So I guess maybe today I'll reach out to Pew and say, "Hey, is
There's a
there
lot
someone I
of
can talk to?"
there's a lot of closeted atheists out there,
Well,
and people categorize as something else.
I think it's how could I want to compare it to something, but I don't have a ready comparison. Maybe the community for cosplay. There's all these conventions where people go to and they do the full thing. They get dressed up and they completely transform themselves and look amazing. Maybe it's like finding someone who does that. You don't want to necessarily talk about dressing up as name one of these video game icons, Pocket Locker. Name one for me.
Ryu, yeah, boom, yeah, there, boom,
Ryu.
yeah, boom. Street Fighter 6 classic.
Okay. So people don't necessarily walk around talking about how they dress up as Ryu. But if you're sitting next to someone on a plane and you have your phone open and you're playing the game on your phone, and they look at you and their eyes get big. "Oh, you're playing such and such." "Yeah." "Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorite games." "Who's your favorite character in the game?" "Ryu." "Dude, I cosplay as Ryu." "So do I." Or "I cosplay as so and so." And now you have this conversation. Well, there's probably another 40 people on the plane. If you're in one of these planes with 500 passengers, there's probably another 40 people on there that to some degree are into it or want to be into it. But you go to a convention and you're surrounded by them.
Yeah, and that's
And
what
they
they're
went through
doing
all
every
that trouble.
Sunday.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they went. Well, I'm just saying that the people who are non-believers, once the door is open, right? They're the hidden non-believer. Once someone opens the door to the discussion, they start unloading all these things that have been on their chest. As I
mm.
said, when there was some school shooting, I think it was, and then thoughts and prayers started to get made fun of. Yeah, because thoughts and prayers don't do shit. At least the prayers don't.
Yeah,
You're sending me my mother had her leg amputated. Are you sending me your thoughts and prayers? You're a little late with the prayer.
right.
God didn't fix anything. He's clearly not working on that. I don't know what he's working on. Probably some new form of sacrament, but he's certainly not doing anything to help my mom.
Yeah,
But he
well,
was supposed to. He
I'm gonna
promised
start
he
saying
would.
carry your poster, because when you go to like a science conference, a lot of times you meet people because you sometimes have to travel through a common exchange airport, like where you make your changeover,
Hmm.
and so you'll end up on a plane with all these people, and believe it or not, the other people carrying a long tube that clearly contains a poster are also probably going to the same conference. And
That's
so
right.
it's crazy. Like, you feel like you travel from somewhere in the world. Now you're in this different state. You don't know everybody's around you. And then you get on your plane. But like you said, to your point, when you start to notice there's 5 or 6 other people shoving their posters away, and you go up and strike a conversation and say, "Hey, are you going to this conference?" "Oh yeah, of course." Yeah, of course. Yeah, so, yeah,
That's a great example.
I noticed your poster. Yeah. But yeah, all right, gang. As always, appreciate you guys so much for watching.
Yes,
Thank you guys so
all.
much for supporting this show, and be good to yourselves
and each other.